Hi and welcome to my video. Today we're going to understand what are forward contracts with respect to foreign exchange hedging. We're going to start our discussion by first defining a forward contract. Next, we will take up an example and use figures to understand how a forward contract functions. Third, we will talk about a few important characteristics of a forward contract and how is a forward contract different from the other forms of foreign exchange hedging instruments. And finally, fourth, we're going to talk about a few advantages and disadvantages of a forward contract. Alright, so let's begin by first understanding what is a forward contract. A forward contract is a contract between two parties to exchange currency at a predetermined exchange rate, which is also known as a forward exchange rate, on a fixed future date. It is an over-the-counter derivative instrument that can be customized or tailored to a specific amount or time period. This simply means that unlike the other foreign exchange hedging instruments such as futures and options, a forward contract is not exchange traded. And since it is not exchange traded, a forward contract has this element of flexibility and it can be designed and customized as per the specific needs of the parties involved. So this is one of the most important characteristics of a forward contract. We will now take up an example and understand with the help of figures how a forward contract functions. Alright, so say we have company A which is based in the UK, and company A is an exporter and is expecting a receipt of US dollars 100,000 in 4 months time. We have the spot rate, which is GBP1 is equal to US dollars 1.20. Now if the company as an exporter is concerned that its local currency would appreciate in 4 months time. To appreciate means to become stronger, to become more valuable. And the company expects that the future 4-month exchange rate would be GBP1 is equal to US dollars 1.30. So why is this a matter of concern for the company? This is a matter of concern for the company because company A is an exporter, and in case there is an appreciation in local currency, company A would receive lesser in 4 months time than what it would receive right now. Alternatively, if company A was an importer, then the local currency appreciating would be a favorable movement in the exchange rate for the company, and the company would benefit. But this is not the case here. Company A is an exporter, and hence the local currency appreciating is a matter of concern for the company. So if you look at the figures, the receipt now at the spot rate would be GBP 83,333.33. How did we arrive at this figure? We simply divided the US dollar amount by the US dollar exchange rate. And second, the expected receipt in 4 months time would be GBP 76,923.08. This is using the 4 months expected exchange rate, which is GBP1 is equal to US dollar 1.30. So how can company A really protect itself or hedge itself against this transaction risk exposure and be sure of what it is exactly going to receive in 4 months time? This can very well be done by entering into a forward contract. Company A can actually look out for a counterparty and enter into a forward contract and fix the exchange rate at which it would undertake or exchange its currency. So therefore company A meets with company B, which is our counterparty here, and they both enter into a forward agreement to exchange currency at a fixed forward rate of GBP1 is equal to US dollars 1.15. Now say we arrive at the end of the duration in 4 months time. What would be the net amount receivable for company A under the forward contract? the net amount receivable in 4 months' time for company A would be GBP 86,956.52. So as you may notice, company A is certainly benefiting by a forward contract here. It is benefiting in two ways. One, that it is now certain of what amount it is going to receive, and two, to some extent it is able to hedge against the transaction risk, if not entirely. To some extent, yes, it is able to hedge against the transaction risk involved here. Now let us consider an alternative scenario. Say company A is still an exporter and there is a depreciation in local currency. That is, the local currency is now becoming weaker. Can company A back off or choose to leave the contract in case there's a depreciation in local currency? A depreciation in local currency is a favorable movement for the company. So can company choose to back off in that case from this forward contract arrangement? No, it cannot. Once it enters into a forward contract arrangement with the counterparty, it is bound to fulfill the terms of the forward contract, and it cannot simply choose to walk off from the arrangement just because there is a favorable movement in exchange rate. So that takes us to one of the most important characteristic of a forward contract. A forward contract definitely protects you, definitely hedges against an unfavorable movement, but at the same time it also limits the advantage that you can take of a favorable movement in exchange rates. So that is very important. Alright, we have a few important characteristics to note. One that we've already discussed before is that a forward contract is not an exchange traded instrument. Rather, it is an over-the-counter derivative instrument. Two, since a forward contract is not exchange traded, there is this element of flexibility, and the forward contract can be designed, can be customized as per the needs of the parties involved. Now, this may be possible with respect to three things. One is the duration, two is the time, and three is the exchange rate. Third, forward contracts are the most frequently used form of foreign exchange risk hedging. Why? First is because they're very easy to understand, they're very straightforward. Two is that they're very common amongst the small retailers and the retail investors and the small businesses, who do not have access to exchange traded instruments. So they are most commonly used amongst them. Alright, so now this is our final slide where we're going to talk about the various advantages and the disadvantages of a forward contract. The first advantage is that they're customized contracts, as we discussed. So there's this element of flexibility. They can be matched to the exact needs of the parties in terms of the size, in terms of the duration, in terms of the exchange rate. Second, unlike the exchange traded contracts, unlike the exchange traded foreign exchange instruments, hedging instruments, a forward contract does not really require an initial margin. So what happens in case of the other foreign exchange hedging instruments such as futures and options is that since there is an exchange involved, since there is a clearing house involved, the investors are expected to maintain and they're expected to deposit and maintain a certain amount with the clearing house. The clearing house demands this amount in order to protect itself against any kind of credit risk. So this is a brief understanding of what we mean by initial margin. So there's no such requirement. The reason being because there's no clearing house or exchange involved in case of a forward contract. Third, we have the third advantage that we have is that it is very easy, straightforward, and simple to understand. Let's move on to the disadvantages. The first and the most important disadvantage of a forward contract is that the parties involved are always subject to a counterparty credit risk. When and how? You see, if there is a favorable movement in the exchange rate, there is always a possibility that the counterparty might simply choose not to abide by the terms of the contract. And just because the situation is just because the forward contract terms are now unfavorable for the person, and they may simply choose not to abide and take advantage of the favorable movement in the exchange rates. So there is always this possibility. Second is that a forward contract eliminates an exposure to both an upside as well as a downside movement in foreign exchange rates. What is an upside movement? An upside movement is a favorable movement, and a downside movement is an unfavorable movement. Third is that some governments have banned the use of foreign exchange contracts, and this is mainly undertaken to reduce the exchange volatility. So in such cases, it is obviously not possible to use forward contracts, and companies in such countries then usually are more inclined towards the other forms of foreign exchange hedging instruments, maybe futures, options, money markets, etc. Thank you for watching.